In a bustling city where luxury cars glide over marble driveways and corporate towers kiss the clouds, lived a man named Richard Langston, one of the wealthiest industrialists in the region. To the public eye, Richard had everything: wealth, influence, and success. But beyond the glimmering surface, Richard's heart was anchored by a deep sadness. His only son, James, had been bound to a wheelchair since the age of 8 due to a rare neurological disorder. James was a bright young man with a brilliant mind and a gentle soul. He was kind, intelligent, witty, and deeply compassionate. But society, with all its expectations and unspoken judgments, often looked past all that, focusing only on his wheelchair. Despite growing up surrounded by privilege, James lived with a gnawing loneliness. Most people he met either saw him as that disabled billionaire's son, or approached him with pity instead of genuine care. His world was filled with polite smiles but empty interactions, until one day, his father decided to do something unconventional that would change their lives forever. Richard, though a busy tycoon, had always tried to be present in James's life. He read to him as a child, supported his academic interests, and ensured the best medical care money could buy. But watching his son grow into a young man without the experiences most take for granted, friendship, dating, emotional connection, wounded him more deeply than he let on. One evening, after noticing James sitting alone on the patio, watching couples walk hand in hand through their estate garden, Richard made a silent promise: he would help James find someone who could see the beauty within him. The idea seemed ridiculous even to him at first, a blind date for his son, but Richard believed that sometimes, fate needed a little push. So, he discreetly arranged for a small gathering at their estate under the pretense of a charity art event. He invited several young women who had expressed interest in community causes, people he hoped would have both heart and character, not knowing they were also being gently guided into a social interaction with James. James was informed of the event the day before. He was hesitant, even slightly embarrassed. "Dad, I'm not some charity case looking for sympathy," he said with frustration. Richard knelt beside his son and said, "You're right. You're not. But you are someone who deserves love, and maybe, just maybe, this is how it finds you." The next day, the estate buzzed with soft music, laughter, and polite conversation. James, dressed sharply in a navy blue suit, sat quietly beside his father in the center garden. One by one, the guests arrived, many of them charmed by the grandeur of the Langston mansion, admiring the architecture and sipping on champagne. Some acknowledged James with a polite hello. A few struck up brief conversations, mostly revolving around his father or the house. None looked deeper. And then came Emma. She wasn't the richest girl in the room, nor the most extravagantly dressed. She wore a simple pastel dress and carried a single white daisy in her hand. As she walked past the decorative fountain toward the seating area, her eyes met James's. She smiled, not the tight, polite smile he was used to, but a warm, open, genuine one. Then, without hesitation, she walked up to him and held out the daisy. "For you," she said. "I thought it might brighten your day." James blinked in surprise. No one had ever brought him a flower before. Not like that, not without a reason or an occasion. Just because. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice almost catching in his throat. Richard watched from beside him, silently stunned. He had planned everything down to the last canapé, but he had never expected someone to walk in and truly see his son. Emma didn't ask about the house, or the parties, or the business. She asked James what books he liked, whether he preferred cats or dogs, and what music made him feel most alive. They talked about their favorite films, their childhood dreams, and even shared laughter over the awkwardness of first meetings. For the first time in years, James didn't feel like a man in a wheelchair. He felt like a man. The evening passed like a dream. Before she left, Emma turned to James and said, "I don't know what tonight was really supposed to be, but I'm glad I came. I'd like to see you again, if that's all right." James nodded, unable to hide the smile spreading across his face. Over the weeks that followed, James and Emma began to see each other regularly. They explored parks, attended jazz nights, visited bookstores, and sat under stars sharing secrets only hearts dared to whisper. Their relationship bloomed naturally, like that single daisy she'd handed him, unassuming, beautiful, and full of life. Richard, watching from a respectful distance, felt something heal within him. His son had found someone who looked past everything the world used to judge him by. Someone who listened, who laughed, who loved, not despite his wheelchair, but because of everything he was. One night, Emma confided in James that she had nearly skipped the event. She didn't have the right dress, felt nervous about going to a billionaire's estate, and even turned her car around once before changing her mind. But something told me to come back, she said. Like maybe there was something important waiting for me. I think it was fate, James replied softly. But if it wasn't, I'm glad you didn't let fear stop you. As time passed, their story began to inspire others, not through headlines or magazine spreads, but through word of mouth, shared in quiet corners and whispered as a reminder that love doesn't seek perfection, it seeks connection. James eventually gave a speech at an inclusivity summit, where he shared his experience. He spoke not of disability, but of dignity. Not of wealth, but of worth. He talked about how one flower, one moment of kindness, had been the seed for a future filled with color. At the end of the speech, he introduced Emma as his partner, and the crowd rose in a standing ovation, not for his wealth, or even his courage, but for the honesty of his journey. Their relationship wasn't always easy. They faced moments of misunderstanding, the challenges of public scrutiny, and the practical limitations of accessibility. But through it all, they held on to what they had first seen in each other, that spark of soul recognition that no obstacle could dim. Years later, at a quiet ceremony under the same garden where they first met, James and Emma exchanged vows. The white daisy she had once offered him was now part of her bouquet. Richard stood proudly beside them, tears in his eyes, not because he had spent millions to make it happen, but because something far more valuable had taken place. His son had been truly seen, truly loved, and finally, truly happy. And it all began with one girl, one flower, and the courage to look past appearances into the heart of another.